South Korea, a nation comparable in size to Indiana, faces significant geographic limitations that hinder its economic potential. Its terrain is rugged and steep, with only 22% of its land being suitable for agriculture, and it lacks substantial mineral resources. Although the country does possess coal reserves, they are limited, ranking it 49th globally. Oil reserves are also extremely scarce, tying it for last place worldwide. Nevertheless, South Korea has defied these constraints to emerge as a trillion-dollar economy. Within just a few generations, it has evolved into the fourth largest economy in Asia and the 14th largest globally, becoming a highly industrialized, high-income nation. Relying heavily on other avenues for economic development, the country focused on leveraging its human capital and investing heavily in education and technology. It also prioritized industrialization and international trade to drive economic growth. This has enabled the country to emerge as one of the world's most advanced economies. South Korea's strategic nurturing of Samsung has also led to the emergence of a colossal multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, which helped position South Korea as a global leader in various sectors. Its impact, however, extends beyond economic contributions. Samsung's dominance raises significant concerns about the concentration of power and its implications for South Korea's economy and society. But how did the multinational conglomerate manage to thrive during South Korea's most challenging times? And how did it come to wield such considerable political influence over the country? In 1938, before the Republic of Korea was established, there was a modest grocery trading shop named Samsung, specializing in fish and noodles. Little did its owner, Lee Byung-chul, know at the time that his small enterprise would evolve into the central engine for one of the most significant economic revolutions of the 20th century. As South Korea faced the challenges of establishing its economic footing, Samsung's trajectory began to change. By the late 1950s, South Korea experienced an extraordinary economic transformation. The GDP of the nation surged by a staggering 100 times in just 40 years, an economic miracle that emerged from the ashes of adversity. In 1950, the Korean War erupted, with the Communist North swiftly taking over the entire peninsula by August of that year. South Korean forces were left with little land to defend, and by the war's end in 1953, much of the country's already limited industrial infrastructure lay in ruins. Despite these devastating setbacks, the conflict and its aftermath created unexpected opportunities. Within this turmoil emerged a demand for crucial supplies, presenting a window of opportunity for enterprising businesses like Samsung. Leveraging this demand, Samsung gradually diversified its operations to encompass a wider array of industries, creating in part what is now known as the Samsung Group. For Lee, venturing into the sugar refinery and wool mill sectors were a logical progression, especially as South Korea's first president, Syngman Rhee, sought to reduce the nation's reliance on imports. In the aftermath of war, with few competitors in a nation ravaged by conflict, the government facilitated the construction of facilities and the importation of sugar to fuel Lee's projects. With time, Samsung's influence and prosperity continued to grow. Within a mere decade of purchasing its first sugar plant, Samsung emerged as the dominant force in the peninsula's business landscape. Lee's estimated net worth soared to account for a remarkable 19% of all South Korean wealth. However, despite these economic triumphs, the nation still grappled with deep-rooted challenges, and a significant portion of its population was still living in poverty, a situation that reached a tipping point in 1961 when the Rhee administration was overthrown. After seizing power in a military coup, Park Chung-hee initially promoted economic reforms that included breaking up monopolistic business practices and reducing the influence of the chaebols, which refer to Korea's family-controlled, government-aided corporate groups. However, as Park's administration progressed, he shifted his strategy and began to support the chaebols as key drivers of economic development. With a focused determination to drive industrial exports and harness South Korea's human resources, the country's new leader embarked on a mission to propel the nation towards economic prosperity. Under his leadership, GDP growth skyrocketed, only falling below 9% annually 3 times between 1963 to 1978. producing a remarkable era of economic expansion and transformation. Recognizing the potential of these large conglomerates to spearhead economic growth, Park's government provided them with substantial state support to cheap credit, numerous subsidies, tax breaks, favorable government policies, and incentives for exports and industrial projects. Under Park's leadership, the chaebols flourished, contributing significantly to the country's rapid industrialization and economic development. The synergy between government support and corporate ambition laid the foundation for South Korea's transformation into a high-income, industrialized nation. The government and the chaebols developed a symbiotic relationship where the chaebols helped achieve national economic goals in exchange for state support. Despite debates about the chaebols' influence on South Korean politics and society, there was widespread agreement on the positive impact they had on the country's standard of living. Between 1950 and 1990, South Korea saw dramatic improvements in public health. Life expectancy more than doubled, and infant mortality plummeted to less than a tenth of its post-war rate. After Lee Byung-chul's death in 1987, Samsung continued its international expansion and strengthened its domestic dominance under the leadership of his son, Lee Kun-hee. Today, 7 decades after the company's visionary pivot, South Korea's identity is inextricably intertwined with the multinational conglomerate. Samsung Group's revenue accounts for around 20% of the country's GDP. Even on a global scale, it is unprecedented for one family to control a single company that contributes 1/5 of an entire economy, especially in an advanced and diversified economy. The only entity that rivals this economic influence is the South Korean government, whose spending accounts for between 20% to 25% of GDP on average. The impact of this is monumental, as Samsung's influence extends beyond mere economic metrics. It affects virtually every aspect of South Korean life, from employment to cultural identity and national pride. Samsung's footprint is immense. In South Korea, there is a societal obsession with securing employment at prestigious corporations, especially Samsung. For many young people and their parents, landing a job with the conglomerate represents the pinnacle of social and academic success. This ambition fuels a culture where excelling in education and meeting stringent corporate hiring standards are viewed as essential steps toward reaching this esteemed goal. The rigorous process of gaining employment at Samsung involves excelling academically, performing well on standardized tests, and participating in numerous extracurricular activities to stand out from the competition. The pressure to achieve these standards starts early, with students and their families investing heavily in education, private tutoring, and extracurricular programs to enhance their prospects. This intense focus on academic and professional success is deeply ingrained in South Korean society. However, the deep entanglement of government and corporate interests in South Korea has historically led to instances of bribery, favoritism, and unethical practices, underscoring the darker side of this powerful partnership. Samsung currently has 59 main affiliate companies. Through a complex structure of ownership, the family has managed to maintain absolute control over the entire organization. After former chairman Lee Kun-hee suffered a heart attack and was hospitalized, his son, Lee Jae-yong, took charge orchestrating strategic mergers and reorganizations within Samsung affiliates to consolidate their power. The 2015 merger between Samsung C&T and Cheil Industries was a key move in this strategy, aimed at strengthening the Lee family's grip on the conglomerate's core entities. However, the family could not do this alone. The Ministry of Health and Welfare, under President Park Geun-hye's oversight, managed South Korea's National Pension Service, which held the largest stake in C&T. Leveraging political connections, the Lee family navigated through a confidant of Park, influencing the pension service's crucial vote favoring the merger. This maneuver allowed the family to retain control of the conglomerate without directly holding a majority stake in any single company, thus preserving their influence and vast fortune. However, the scandal rocked the nation, eventually leading to the arrest of Lee Jae-yong and the impeachment of President Park in 2017. Despite public outrage, History repeated itself when Lee Jae-yong faced legal troubles, mirroring those of his father a decade earlier. In 2008, Lee Kun-hee received a 3-year prison sentence for bribery, but was pardoned by the president to continue overseeing South Korea's bid to host the 2018 Olympic Games. Similarly, in 2022, Lee Jae-yong was pardoned despite being on parole, with advocacy from business groups and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. His pardon was justified by his essential role as Samsung's heir, crucial for the company's post-lockdown recovery. This, along with Park's pardon and release in 2021, highlights the intertwining of corporate power and political influence in South Korea, exposing systemic issues of corruption at the highest levels. Given Samsung's immense economic influence over South Korea, this argument isn't all that absurd, even though it is obviously unfair. It underscores a troubling reality. It seems to be an unbreakable cycle. To a certain extent, Samsung can thrive independently of South Korea, but the reverse is not true. South Korea, particularly its politicians, cannot afford to sever ties with Samsung. This creates a precarious imbalance where a mega-corporation essentially becomes an extension of the government in a nation as small as South Korea. Yet, companies cannot and should not govern nations. Public discontent with Samsung is increasing, especially among younger generations who lack the historical perspective of the company's pivotal role in the country's development. Increasingly, they are vocal in their opposition to corruption and cronyism. The question now is, which will falter first? Will the Lee family maintain their influence through their complex ownership structures? Or will the hardworking people who built Samsung's empire succeed in reshaping the delicate power dynamics between Samsung and South Korean politics? It's a complex issue with profound implications, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your perspective in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more.